Hey, this is Ralph. In this video, I want to create a divided navigation menu for a web page. So this is coming from a question from a viewer who wanted to have a couple of menu items to the left of the screen and then like 3 menu items to the right of the screen. And sometimes the sequence can get a little bit wacky if you're using float for those list items. So let's do it this way. Now I've got a web page set up, and so far I've got a nav on there, class nav1. I intend to make 2 nav menus. And then I've got an unordered list with a series of list items, generic menu items, nothing much there. So let's go ahead and get to work. And by the way, you can see this on my page. It's just a generic menu item over there. So let's go ahead and style this. Now I'm going to start off with nav1, and let's make sure we can see it at least for the short term. Outline 2 pixels, solid. I'm going to set its width to be 80%. I'm going to give it a margin, 200 pixels top and bottom, auto margin left and right. That's going to allow us to visualize that nav menu. Now, what I want to do next, new rule here, is nav1 unordered list. So the unordered list is the child of my nav1, but it's the parent of the list items. And for that, I'm going to do a display flex direction row. That's going to get those list items side by side. I know they're really tiny and hard to see, but they are side by side now. Let's make sure we can visualize them. Nav1 list items, outline 2 pixels, solid, dark red. And let's go ahead and do this too. Nav1 anchors, the anchor tags within those list items. Let's see, font size 2 Ms, 16 pixels of padding top and bottom, 32 pixels of padding left and right. There we go. So now they're really big and easier to notice. Now what I'm going to do, since this is a Flexbox container, I'm going to go ahead and center this entire list item, this entire menu horizontally. I'm going to do that right up here. Justify content center. And that's an easy way to get that in the middle. And now if I want space in between the second and the third menu items, now, it depends on what your motivation for and your goal for having that in there is, but let's say you wanted to have a logo in there or something like that. So what I'll do is I'll write in here, .nav1 list item nth child, number 2, margin right, let's say 200 pixels. In fact, I'm going to go to all of these and put a margin of 4 pixels on them. So now there's going to be space around all of those list items, and there we go. In fact, let me go back, get rid of this outline, and we've got ourselves a divided menu. Two menu items on the left, 3 menu items on the right, and there's certainly space in there now that we could position a logo. I don't know, yeah, I probably would want to have something on here if it was a logo that was going to be clicked on, that I'd want to have some kind of an anchor in there. However, I'd also start to challenge the logical flow of this. If this is truly one menu item, then all the menu items should be part of the same unordered list, the same nav. But if these 2 menu items and then 3 menu items are distinctly different purposes, maybe one is some navigation, the other one's like shopping, secondary navigation, and stuff like that, I'd use 2 completely separate nav tags and 2, they would be separate items. But if it is one menu item, there we go. Now, I wasn't sure in the original question, but the user may want these 2 menu items all the way over to the left and these 3 menu items all the way over to the right with just an unknown space in there. So let's go ahead and give that a try. Now, for something like that, I'm going to take this first nav menu. I'm going to copy the whole thing, paste. I'm going to call it nav2. And to make things a little bit easier and a little bit more organized, I'm going to put a set of span tags right there, and I'm going to enclose the first set of 2 menu items and the second set of 3 menu items in their own sets of spans. Now that I've got that, my CSS could be similar, but let's try this. I'm going to go ahead and do this kind of starting from scratch here. Nav2, that's good. Outline 2 pixels, solid, dark blue. And margin 200 pixels top and bottom. Well, sure, I'll do auto left and right. However, once I put a width of 200, or not 200%, 100% on there, we're going to start to see that this nav menu takes up the full width of my browser window, which is probably what I want. Now, .nav2 span. Now, span is the parent of those list items, and we're going to go ahead and do a display flex on those. Flex direction row is fine. And you know what? I think I will do a little bit of cheating here. I'm going to take my nav1 list items. Those all have an outline and a margin on there. Actually, I'll just do this. nav2 list items will have the same characteristics. And then all the anchor tags, I'm going to do the same characteristics. nav2 anchors. And yeah, I think that's good. So now we'll start to see what's going on. That's a little bit weird, right? Is that what we want? So far it is. We do want the 2 rows. However, I want to go to that nav2 span nth child number 1. And I'll do this. I'm going to float it to the left. Need a colon there. Well, let's see if I can't type this properly. Float left, that's cool. I'm going to copy that. And then we'll take the second span within that list, float that to the right. That should start to get the look we might want. I don't need that outline there anymore, so I'll get rid of that dark outline. Now, if you wanted the dark outline on there, you certainly could. You might add something like overflow hidden, or you could do a clear float in order to have that expand. But now we're going to have our 2 menu items on the left and our 3 menu items on the right, so that they just spread and take out space. And you'll see that obviously if my browser is wider, now obviously we have to deal for tablets and phones if we get too narrow, but otherwise we get those menu items spread apart. Again, though, this kind of exaggerates this potential issue. If these menu items are so far apart, are they distinctly different navigation menus, nav menus? And so that would kind of indicate that I'd want to have one set of nav tags that I use over here. Now, CSS Grid would also be a great way to construct this too, and you could, get the same result that way. But there's 2 different methods to give enough space in the middle for branding, logos, and things like that. HTML is relatively similar. Key difference is I'm surrounding the sections of the list items that I want with their own span. Could have used a div there, by the way, too. I used a span. And so that those items can be floated left or right where necessary, or they could have been in position, too. That's another way to go. We could have done a position absolute, and I kind of like that idea, too. Position the first group to the left, position the other group to the right. So different ways to go about that. But that is one particular method, and yeah, hopefully that gives you some ideas for your project if you want to create a divided navigation menu. Thanks for hanging out with me.